caring for aging parents is a significant issue for a lot of people. Just when you think you're an empty nester, a lot of people end up shifting gears and then caring for somebody else.
Right.
Is this real common among your peers, Ron?
Yes. Both of my parents have already passed, but my brother and sister-in-law care for her mother. There's an in-law suite that is built onto their home, and she's living there and been doing well for her age. She's in her 90s now.
Yeah, I don't know that many people are prepared for that to happen. I mean, some maybe, but I think when someone pictures their golden years of their life, right? When they're, I guess golden's pretty intense, but post 50,
okay,
you start to think, oh, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to travel. I'm going to do this, hang out with my grandkids. No one goes, I'm going to help care for my parents. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's not a long-term goal, but I think as you get closer, you realize, okay, my parents are still alive and depending. Some are, spry and with it until into their 90s or some beyond. But most, start to deteriorate. Mm-hmm. That's the way of most life. So as you see them start to slip, you start to think, okay, what's the plan? You and your siblings, if you have any, will start to discuss, okay, mom's getting forgetful. She runs stop signs and red lights sometimes. We're going to have to take the car away.
Yeah.
Whatever those kind of issues come up. And you talk it through and decide, is she going to live with one of us? Is she going to live with each of us, 3 months out of the year? Are we going to put her in a home? Gosh, that sounds terrible. But,
But sometimes it's the best choice.
Yeah. Make accommodations for her at a senior living facility.
Yeah. And Sarah and I are kind of in a holding pattern. And I know that sounds rude, but with my parents in their mid-70s, or early to mid-70s, sometime in the next 10 to 15 years, more than likely, we're going to shift into caring for our parents.
Mm-hmm.
So what are our obligations and moral responsibilities as believers? Oddly enough, this came up in a sideways way in an advice column in the Washington Post.
Oh.
It was a Dear Carolyn, because there's a Dear Everybody now, but
sure.
Nonetheless, a very specific situation came up. Here's what a woman wrote to Carolyn at the Washington Post. My father is in his late 80s and fairly self-sufficient, but still needs support. My mother, also in her 80s, has balance, significant hearing, and minor memory issues. My brother has been their primary support, and I'm truly grateful for everything he does. This arrangement has worked largely because my parents have financially supported him for many years, and he does not work or have family of his own. In contrast, I work full-time, am married, and have children. My role in my parents' care has mainly been to visit, take them to doctor's appointments if requested, and host all the holidays. I feel like I should visit more, but life commitments often get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
My father and brother confronted me to say I wasn't contributing enough to my parents' care. I offered to pay for a caregiver, explore assisted living options, or make modifications to their home to ease their living situation. All my suggestions were dismissed. They told me my job was unimportant and insisted it was my moral duty as the daughter to care for them personally rather than delegate the responsibility to others. My father has been texting me articles about this duty, and I'm heartbroken that my father feels I'm failing him.
Mm. Yeah, my heart goes out to her. I'm frustrated at the father because I'm probably closer to his position, and I'm thinking, you goofball, could you find any more divisive way to wedge between you and your daughter?
But he's made it a moral issue, so in his mind, he's on the moral high ground.
Yeah.
Right, he's not
in
being
his
petty.
Deteriorating mind.
Isn't he, though? I mean, he's using a guilt trip to get what he wants, which is generally not. We just talked about going into a conversation asking what you want. That's not a good way to preserve your relationship.
And yet, in certain cultures in the world, the idea that a dad would insist that his children care for him would be like, well, of course. What's the problem here?
I do wonder if there's maybe some cultural background we're missing, because they specifically said that as the daughter, it's her duty, which, I mean, why isn't it the son's duty? Why can't they each contribute as they're able? And then it's like, well, what about her duties as a mother? Those are also important.
Well, and to add to the spiciness of this particular situation, she said her brother and her have not had a real close relationship over the years. She says, it's clear he harbors deep resentment towards me.
That's hard.
And as Carolyn wrote, it's like, well, duh. He gave up his entire life to care for your parents.
Okay. Now, see,
that was his choice.
That's more than I understood from it.
He doesn't work, doesn't have a family, cares for his parents full time, and they support him.
Right. I read it as, gosh, how does this guy get along in life if he's never worked?
That's right.
And never got married? Ultimate selfishness, leeching off his parents for his entire life, and now, about time, he's going to repay them by probably staying in their home and, caring for them, continuing his way of, I don't have to pay for my life because you're going to pay for my life.
Yeah, this whole situation is just weird. I don't understand how he can just not have a job. I mean, if he doesn't have a job, if he doesn't have a family, I mean, I'm not saying the sister shouldn't help out and do what she can, but it sounds pretty clear. She has a family that she has to support. He somehow has some setup where he has all the free time to care for them.
And I believe she has done well to make offers. She has extra finances, apparently, so I can help modify your home to make it more comfortable and more safe for you to live there. I can pay for a caregiver to come in if brother needs time to do whatever he does in his free time, not working and not caring for them. And then, so she's made offers. They're narrowed in on one specific thing. Your job is not important. Bad value judgment on their part, but that's the way they're going. And your prime responsibility is to be here personally caring for us. I don't know if they're even in the same city.
Is there a world in which, though, that her father could look at her and see that she's valuing her work over him?
Oh, yeah. There are selfish people in the world who will do that.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Well, because, I could give wider context, but the scripture indicates that if you don't care for your own family, you're worse than an unbeliever. Mm-hmm. And the support in Acts that was offered to widows was only for those who didn't have people to care for them. Mm-hmm. Like if you had if you had adult children or whatever, the expectation was that they would care for you. Now, Of course, that was an entirely different economic and social structure than what we have here. And I'm not saying I disagree with you, Ron. I'm just for the sake of conversation.
Sure.
What I want to get to in just a minute here, after we take a quick break, is the core of the issue here of the disagreement, which is the father believes it's his daughter's moral duty to care for him personally. Like that children have a moral duty to care personally for their aging parents. To what extent is that accurate? To what extent is that moral obligation accurate for a Christian? It's an issue that everyone has to face at some point, or most people do. It's caring for aging parents as an adult. Mm-hmm. And it is a growing problem in our society, and I think a common issue that people really struggle with. It can create stress on a marriage, and it's something people don't really think about as they get close to retirement age, caring for their aging parents.
Yeah, often you put it off until it's imminent, the point where mom and or dad can't live on their own anymore, and then you've got to face the decision. It should be something that you at least bring up from time to time and say, hey, now that the kids are gone, we've got a spare bedroom or two. What would you think if the time came, mom or dad came and lived with us?
Yeah, and I don't know what your experience has been, but it's one of those where Sarah and I have looked at each other and said, with my grandmother, she had to almost be compelled to leave her home.
Oh, yeah, it's difficult.
And we look at each other and we go, how do we avoid doing that to our kids? Because it seems inevitable that there's very few elderly who are proactive in this area. Like who go, I don't know, maybe I'm slowing down a bit. Maybe I ought to make some decisions before I'm forced out. Because the forcing is where all the emotional turmoil goes.
It's traumatizing for everybody.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, it seems almost inevitable that part of aging is getting stubborn and refusing to be proactive. I don't.
I mean, I've seen this happen with a couple family members, and it really is hard. And your heart breaks for them because they don't want to acknowledge that. I mean, I'm sure losing your independence is huge. They don't want to acknowledge that they can't do something. They don't want to acknowledge that they have to leave the house they've lived in for 30, 40, 50 years. But it really is hard on the rest of the family, too, to be worried about you and to see you decline. And they don't want to take you out of your home either, but sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah, and it's also defining what a home is. Like my grandmother's problem, it seems harsh. Forgive me, Grandma, that she can't hear me, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They lived in their house for 40 years. She was far too attached to her home.
Mm-hmm.
As a follower of Christ, who cares where you live?
Yeah, but you've got the memories of 40 years of raising children and your marriage, and every room you walk around and you're like, oh, I remember when little Mark would play in this room. Or
good. Perfect response would be then infuriate older Mark by making him get the police to force you out of the house. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Like I understand the sentiment of what you're saying, but I've had to be deliberate with my wife about like, how are we going to not get so attached to this place that we end up ruining our children by making them like call the authorities to get us to leave.
Or having you declared incompetent by, I think there's like a doctor and a lawyer that have to do that. No one wants to do that.
My dad had to do that with his father. My mother had to get with her mom, a social worker from the county to come in and essentially say, you can't live here by yourself.
Yeah.
That was very traumatizing. And all that tied to a Dear Carolyn article we found in the Washington Post, where a woman basically, it's complicated, but at the end of the day, she and her dad disagree about a fundamental principle. Her dad thinks it's her moral duty to personally care for him. He doesn't think she ought to be delegating his care to other people.
And I don't think he should be delegating what she can and can't provide for him. Like, listen, I think that kids, to the best of their ability, should provide care for their parents. I don't think it's right to just say you're going to a nursing home unless it's necessary because you have such medical needs that you cannot be cared for in your home. But there are circumstances in which the kids just cannot, for financial reasons. Maybe they've got their own kids. I know that's this woman's situation. I think you do. There is a reasonable expectation that your kids should provide something, but I don't think you get to say what that something is. He's just asking a lot, and he does have 2 children. So I also take issue with the fact he's putting all of this on one of them.
Yeah. I will say that there's part of me, hopefully it's the Christ follower part, that you can help me evaluate that. That's a little uncomfortable with the American cultural trend of delegating care of the elderly to other people.
Yeah, I agree. I think my personal philosophy on care for aging parents, I think it lies somewhere in between the American way of just they go into a nursing home and we maybe visit them once a week, and how some other cultures might do it, which is mom and dad get full care, no question. Regardless of what a strain this puts on our family, whether this is even a good situation for mom and dad, because maybe they're not healthy enough to live in a home like this.
Yeah, I know somebody, he was very open about it on the radio, so I can say a former vice president of Moody Radio, when his aging parents began to struggle living on their own, everybody moved into a new, larger place. And the parents lived with their adult son and his family. And it prolonged their independence, quote unquote, because they were living with their son and grandchildren. But he felt like there was a dare I say, moral obligation that when he's able, whatever way he's able, to give his parents a higher quality of life and not delegate their care to somebody else.
Right.
Now, he wasn't doing like memory care, skilled nursing care. I'm not talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about they were aging and it was getting harder to live on their own.
Right.
And I think that's great if you can do that.
There's something admirable about that.
Yeah.
I just don't even know that enough people consider it as an option.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the dad here in the story is right, that it's her moral duty to care for him personally. But I don't know that she ought to also be able to get away with delegating all of it with money.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I'd be curious to know, does she live in the same city or nearby? Is Dad's imposition also saying, not only is your job not important, your life basically is unimportant. Uproot everything and move so you can be here and personally take care of me. There's questions about the extremity of his ask.
Is there a world in which, though, it might be best if they picked up and moved to maybe combine resources with parents to care for them, as opposed to write a check?
Oh, yeah, I think there's situations where that makes sense and is the best course of action. And I don't know enough about this woman's specific situation to be able to say what they should or shouldn't do.
Yeah, it's always hard in these things because you never have the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, because I can go either way, where it does, on one hand, it does seem like she's being selfish, but maybe there's things I don't know about where she is completely unable to do more than she's offering. We don't know. So I think you should offer what help you can, but I also don't think, like I said before, I don't think Dad should be dictating what help he's willing to accept.
Mm-hmm.
Chef Ken wrote into us and said, I moved home from Florida to care for my parents. Dad passed and Mom and I still live together, so Mom can still live independently. I have to help Mom in and out of bed, etc., cook, clean. My payoff, and not one that was expected, but I now have a house that's paid for because I moved back.
Aw.
Right. And it sounds like Chef Ken is a single man with no children, so that works well in his life situation. If you were married with 3 teenagers and you're trying to, care for your parent, plus you know how running children runs you ragged weeknights and weekends, there's a lot that's going on, and I don't know if a person could do that.
Yeah, and when I look at love of neighbor in Scripture, I look at a perhaps outrageously generous love. When you look at the parable of the Good Samaritan, you see a man who, with a complete stranger, not only takes time to help him and care for him, but sets up an open tab at the inn to make sure the guy's cared for,
and then goes about his life.
Right, which is a very good point.
He does not stay there and live with the guy till he passes.
But and it's a very good point, Ron. My question, though, is one, not of exactly how to handle this, but more of leaning. Mm-hmm. I think perhaps the American cultural leaning is toward personally doing less, when I wonder if the Christian moral leaning would be to personally doing more. Like, what kind of love is it for parent and honor for parent if the more that you're doing is just simply paying for things? Now, I'm not saying there's you do it all personally, but ought we not lean toward a tangible love, a visit more? Not necessarily move in, visit more. If it's possible, move in.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? I think our cultural tendency perhaps leans the wrong way. You feel better about the leaning as opposed to the committing?
Yes. I would love it if the dynamic could work, that Dad and brother and sister could have a reasoned, comfortable conversation about what's happening now, what Dad would like to see happen, the frustrations brother may be feeling, what you foresee in the future. Dad, are you doing well, or are you slipping fast? But it sounds like there's an animosity there that would be hard to have that conversation.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we talk in the show so much about emotional health, because I think it's so important for us as believers to work out our emotional and relational health throughout life, so that when you encounter difficulties like this, they're more endurable, as opposed to suddenly your dad is making demands of you and your brother's upset with you and you don't know what to do. Yeah, you're right, Ron. Talk about it, for goodness sakes.
Hopefully.
Draw some personal boundaries, but I don't know. Maybe there is a way for her to lean in a little more and be present more, but not give up her entire life.
Right.
And again, it's what my wife and I are wrestling with now is our parents' age. They're independent. They're fine. But how do we lean towards tangible care when possible? Like personal, one-on-one care when possible? I don't know because my parents and my in-laws live in Minnesota. So
Right.
it's going to be a challenge.
You're not going to give up your job and move back to Minnesota.
No, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Lord Jesus, I hope not. But I want to be open to not being able to just relegate my parents and in-laws to whatever their fate may be if from a distance. You know what I mean? I don't have a perfect answer here. I just think the Christian leaning is toward tangible care whenever possible. Do your best.